Hey there buds, Awesomust here! Last Halloween I did a tier list on all of the Five Nights at Freddy's games that were released up to that point. So this year, I figured we can do something besides talking about FNaF games, and instead talk about FNaF fan games! FNaF fan games have been around since FNaF's inception, and fully show the creativity and drive of the fan base. Though there are some fan games that stand above the rest. Fan games that go beyond the distinction of being simply just a fan game and enter their own realm of distinction. And today, we're going to rank those games on a tier list, or at least the ones I've played. And those games are the Five Nights at Candy's games, the One Night at Flumpty's trilogy, the Dayshift at Freddy's trilogy, the Five Nights at Fuckboys Final Mix trilogy, and the Joy of Creation story mode. There are a lot of games to get through, so let's get this tier list started. A tier list on the Five Nights at Freddy's fan games I've played.
Are you ready for Freddy?
Oh, you know it. Five Nights at Fuckboys is an RPG Maker game made all the way back in November 2014, and was even made before Five Nights at Treasure Island, potentially making it the oldest FNaF fan game to exist. Personally, I played the Final Mix version, so that's the one I'm going to be talking about. In fact, I even played this game on the channel, so check that out after watching this if you want. In the game, Freddy wants to have a hardcore night of debauchery, but to do so, he must shit on all of the cameras to prevent his detection. Yeah, from the very premise alone, you know what kind of game you're in for. Humor like this is sprinkled throughout the entire game, from Foxy masturbating in his pirate cove, to Chica wanting Freddy to devour her hot bird ass, to the always classic
Inhale my dong enragement child.
This game had a humor that helped it stand out in the fan game scene. I quote lines from this series a lot, so you know it did a good job in the humor department. But what about the gameplay? Well, it's an RPG. Help Freddy gather his friends, and together, beat up party hats and gain experience to shit all over the cameras that serve as this game's bosses. While fighting all these enemies, you also collect tokens, which can be used to purchase weapons, skills, and gear from Balloon Boy, the Enragement Child. Party hats even have a 1 in 40 chance to drop each character's kingly weapon, that deal more damage than any weapon from the Enragement Child. This all culminates in a fight with Golden Freddy, who you fight in the office after shitting on all the cameras. Angered at the fact that he wasn't invited to your night of debauchery, he wants to yiff your dick. There are also optional bosses in the form of the toy animatronics, being harder to beat than any camera, which gives each corresponding member in your party their ultimate combo move. And there's also the puppet, whose timer appears after shitting on the second camera you fight. If you don't go to him to wind the music box before the timer reaches 0, you have to fight him, in the form of a boss battle that's even harder than Golden Freddy. Defeating all the toys and the puppet before defeating Golden Freddy then allows you to fight the true final boss, the Enragement Child, in a much more powerful state, Puppet Master Balloon Boy. This all sounds fun and good, and it actually is. I honestly enjoyed my time with this game more than I did with FNaF World. There's even a secret item you can give to Freddy known as the Dragon Dildo. No comment. That you can find by punching the kitchen door 100 times before finding the kitchen key, which allows you to deal even more damage than if you were to use his kingly microphone. But where does this game falter? Where does it lose points? Well, this game is honestly really grind heavy, much more so than other RPGs I've played, as it's what you'll be doing for half your playtime. You have to grind for weapons, gear, large and extra large sodas and pizzas, and cakes all the time. And to even stand a chance against the toys and up, you have to grind for the kingly weapons, which can eat up a lot of time, even with the lucky soda, which boosts item discovery. And even if you get the most defensive gear, half of the ladder boss's attacks can take out your party members in one hit. In all honesty, it's not very well balanced. Using Foxy's skill Plank Walk, which has a chance to paralyze an enemy for 3 turns, is the only way to feel secure while fighting the later bosses. And even then, it felt kinda broken, making a lot of the bosses feel like jokes. Then there's a secret area in the game. After beating all the cameras, a crack appears in the wall near the show stage. And punching it 100 times grants you access to the interior walls. Holy shit! This area is fucking garbage! What on earth were they thinking with the design of this place? Having an area that slowly drains your health that you must replenish at oxygen tanks is bad enough, but why on earth did they make the overworld like the world's hardest game? Essentially, there are these orbs that move back and forth that send you to the very beginning of the area if you hit them. It'd be bad enough if it was just Freddy that had to watch out, but each member of your party adds another hitbox to be wary of. All the while you have to deal with aces, which are different suits of cards that can one-shot a member of your party, and if you encounter them while trying to run past an orb, they'll temporarily halt your movement, ensuring that you'll get hit and sent back to the very beginning. But if you manage to get through all that before punching the screen, quitting the game, or both, you have to deal with one of the worst bosses I've ever fought in my entire life? Question mark, question mark, question mark. This guy is a fucking monster. Not only can he go twice in a row, but his hits one-shot your party members. And that doesn't even mention his support in the form of phantom propellers that deal major damage as well as debuffs. The only member that's faster than him is Foxy, so if he dies, you're fucked with a capital FU. The only way you can stand a chance against him is to grind the aces and look for the godly weapons, the most powerful weapons in the game. They grant all stats up, with damage on par with the Dragon Dildo, and allow your party members to go twice each turn. With that, plank walk with Foxy twice and hope for the best, especially considering the boss's luck stat is 999. And even after all that, I haven't even mentioned the fact that once you enter the interior walls, you can't leave until you beat question mark, question mark, question mark. So if you save in there, you're fucked beyond comprehension, because your extra large pizzas, sodas, and cakes are limited. The only way you can circumvent this is by interacting with a red bottle by the show stage 100 times until a vending machine appears, allowing you to purchase items at the beginning of the area, but good luck figuring that out without looking it up. But hey, at least that area is fucking optional. In fact, don't even enter it. There, I fixed your life. It's not like the game rewards you for beating it. So yeah, this game is rough around the edges, but I enjoyed my time with it. A solid B tier entry to start us off. For one of the oldest FNaF fan games to exist, it sure left quite an impact.
It's me. Are you ready for Freddy?
Five Nights at Fuckboys 2 Final Mix. Taking place before the first game, Toy Freddy wants to have a night of debauchery and shit on all the cameras in order to do so. Yeah, this is near identical to the first game in humor and gameplay. Gather your friends, gain experience and collect tokens to get items, better gear and weapons, and fight cameras. Fight streamers, which replace party hats to also obtain the real weapons, the strongest weapons in the game excluding the Dragon Dildo. At the end, you fight the Enragement Child after shitting on all of the cameras and getting a Dragon Dildo that gets stronger with the more things you've done in the game. Roll credits. But what differentiates this game from the previous? Well, the toy animatronics had different skills, and it's pretty hit and miss. Toy Freddy's Top Hat Slash and Mangle's Paravolt are really solid, and Toy Bonnie's Timer Flip can help if you're in a tight spot with the puppet's timer. Toy Chica's healing moves are also an improvement, but a problem arises when you realize that instead of Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica using MP to use their skills, they instead use TP. So you either have to use donuts to fill the bar for 10 TP each time, which is pretty slow, or fill it by screaming at enemies, which only fills it by 5 TP. And honestly, that sucks. This does get remedied with the Wizards, however. They serve as the toy's equivalent boss fights like in the first game, but rather than giving you an ultimate combo move, they instead join your party, with combos getting unlocked by keystones when you reach max level. While it's cool, you can argue that it becomes too much to manage, and it can become complicated to strategize. Some members of your party might end up becoming useless to your particular strategy. This game also has not one, but 2 puppets, with one getting replaced by the other when the first dies, being stronger and giving you only 4 minutes instead of 5. So that's cool, I guess. With 8 party members it's not so bad. The grinding problem wasn't fixed, however. You still have to grind for items, even more so now that you need to use donuts for Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica, as well as getting many items for your entire party. There's also no extra large items in this game, which makes it very tedious to heal your party members and replenish their MP. And also, there's no Lucky Soda or Lucky Pizza in this game to my knowledge, so if you want tokens or rare items, your grind will take longer than you'd like. There are metal streamers, they give you plenty of tokens and experience, but not only do you need high damage to even damage them, so you'll probably be far into the game as it stands, but they aren't that common, so you can't really rely on them. This game also adds a boss rush consisting of 21 bosses. This boss rush reduces you to level 1 and cuts your damage by 75%. You gain levels back the more bosses you kill. While this seems fun, it can be extremely tedious to prepare for and infuriating to play through. Not to mention the fact that it takes a very long time to beat. At least it's optional, and speaking of optional, there's a super secret boss that you can find. If you defeat both puppets, beat the 3 arcade machines in parts and service, and beat the boss rush before beating the final boss, you can fight the Refurbs, an insanely difficult fight. While it is impossibly difficult, the game doesn't really expect you to beat it. There's even a Game Jolt achievement for surviving 20 turns. It's more of a joke really, and the experience is at least better than the interior walls. So yeah, compared to the first game, Five Nights at Fuckboys 2 is slightly inferior to the original, residing underneath it in B tier. While it is a more streamlined experience, The problems that are fixed get replaced by other problems that are more tedious versions of the ones from the first game, which makes the experience more of a slog. But at least there's no world's hardest game bullshit?
Are you ready for Not Freddy?
Five Nights at Fuckboys 3 Final Mix. Springtrap wants to achieve terminal debauchery, but instead of shitting on cameras, he must instead fight the phantom animatronics. And in order to fight them, you must do a task in the overworld for them first. Outside that, comedy and gameplay are the same outside of one main difference. You only play as Springtrap, which I personally see as an issue. Sure, you can attack twice, but in a lot of instances you can feel overwhelmed, and given that you're the only thing enemies can target, you usually get pummeled to death. This is especially prevalent in the early game, where you can be punished just for existing. He does get way more abilities than any other character, but there are so many that a lot of them may end up feeling useless. You can alleviate this issue by getting the Wire Whip level 8, which lets you take 3 turns instead of 2, and the Platinum Coils, which both drop from Omega Phantom hats with a 1 in 10 and 1 in 40 chance respectively. But in all honesty, since most of the bosses will be dead by this point, it's kinda late in the game, especially considering how shops are only acquirable by defeating each Phantom, with Phantom Foxy being extremely obnoxious. Not only does he reduce your HP to 1 on his first turn every single time using Rushdown, but the move Rushdown never misses, which seems extremely unfair when you consider the fact that it only works for you with a 1% chance. And if he lands a plank walk and paralyzes you, just put the keyboard down, it's practically game over. You get a new skill with each Phantom you beat, but if you beat them over a certain level, you instead get a worse version of that skill, so the game doesn't even let you take the easy way out, or at least a way that isn't infuriating. Another problem is that the optimize feature has been lost, so instead of quickly equipping your best gear, you have to painstakingly put it on yourself, which feels like a really unnecessary downgrade. There are secret bosses in the form of Phantom Tupac and 90s Endoskeleton. Beating the Past Puppet, who's downright unfun to fight by the way due to these reasons, will spawn VHS tapes, and collecting them all will allow you to fight Phantom Tupac. If you beat him, you'll become a rap god, which boosts all your stats, and acquire the Phantom Gun, which incentivizes a different strategy of draining HP and gaining TP to deal devastating attacks. The choice is yours on whether or not you want to use the Wire Whip level 9 or the Phantom Gun, as they both increase your damage by the same amount. Defeating Past Puppet and getting the key shard drops from each Phantom hat allows you to fight the 90s Endoskeleton, which will allow you to fight the 80s Endoskeleton later. But yeah, beat all the Phantoms, then beat the vent security system to help Balloon Boy perform a ritual to resurrect him. Yep, you're the villain all along, which makes sense considering the fact that you're Springtrap. And I'd also like to point out that this game predicted William Afton's English accent. This then leads into Act 2, where you play as Golden Freddy, who plans to stop the plans of the Enragement Rabbit and Enragement Child, fight cameras, get the Hydra Dildo by punching the poster on the wall 100 times, that is if you put it back on the wall as Springtrap in Act 1, and buy items from Walmart and stat boosts from Starbucks. You don't level up, instead gaining massive HP and MP boosts from beating cameras. Secret bosses include Phantom Biggie, who you fight by beating exactly 8 cameras and collecting VHS tapes, and the 80s Endoskeleton, who you find by beating 90s Endoskeleton in Act 1, while beating exactly 6 cameras and finding a portal. Beating Biggie will make you a rap god, and beating the Endo gives you a code after beating Act 2. Beat all the cameras to fight Springtrap and Balloon Boy at the end, and you win! This act is better than Act 1, given Golden Freddy's ability to summon, his powerful attacks, and the availability of the Hydra Dildo. There are even cutscenes showing Golden Freddy's backstory. Yeah, I didn't mention this, but Five Nights at Fuckboys' story is surprisingly complex for what it is without being too cryptic. In Act 1, you can find notes explaining time travel and what Balloon Boy was doing with it, and it's well done. But yeah, with Act 2 done, we can move on to Act 3, and my god. Act 3 is the worst game in the franchise, as it revolves around one thing: grinding. You have to grind for items, grind for key items to unlock your teammates that drop from enemies, grind for key items that let you fight secret bosses, grind for key items that let you use new skills, and grind for the best gear, which by the way, is crazy expensive. And the best weapon is locked behind a specific action in an infuriating sequence. In this sequence, you have to collect tokens while avoiding Vile from the Mega Man X series. You have to be pinpoint accurate with every move you make, otherwise, you die. And to get this extremely powerful weapon, the Scylla Dildo, you have to enter Pirate's Code before Vile appears on screen, and it's super infuriating to do. And guess what? The endgame bosses are infuriatingly difficult. The only way to stand a chance is by using lollipops, which revive you upon being killed by an attack. The effect lasts for 1 turn. In the words of the Lonely Goomba, if the balancing on boss attacks is so shit, you need an item to make it less shit, why not make it less shit to begin with? You'll also need Haste Candy, an equipable accessory which lets your party members attack twice, which means, you guessed it, more grinding. And equipping them lowers your stats, which fucking sucks. And guess what? You can't level up. You're stuck at level 1, and the only way to increase your stats is to unlock the secret vending machine and buy HP, MP, attack, defense, and speed boosts, which all cost 350 tokens each, which means a holy shit fuck ton of grinding. This act sucks, not much else to say. But look, you finally defeat the Enragement Child, whoa! Yeah, overall this is the worst game in the trilogy. Act 1 is not as fun as the other two games due to the problem with one party member, and often feeling downright infuriating with later fights. Act 2 is good, but it's too short, and Act 3 is an extremely tedious and infuriating grindfest. And guess what? I didn't even mention how often the game crashes and has several glitches. I'm looking at you, Past Puppet, and Bonnie's fucking skill card. I put it in C tier. It was an okay conclusion to the series, but it sadly lacked quality, making it come up short. One Night at Flumpty's, a game series that honestly stands on its own in terms of presentation, structure, and humor. And before you say anything, yes, I know about the Jonochrome situation, here's my response to it. I hope this guy improves himself through therapy, and even then, it's not like I'm supporting him through playing these games, as they are the low price of free, which is good for me. So anyways, the fucking game. And yeah, this is extremely solid. The style of this game is insanely good, being all drawn by hand. The simplistic style of the characters even inspired my own art style that I still use to this day. And despite being cutesy looking on the surface, this game builds a great atmosphere. Seeing these cute looking characters roam through the darkness to come for you is honestly quite unsettling, being further enhanced once they reach your door. Ew. In all honesty, it captures the atmosphere of FNaF 1, making kid-friendly looking characters unsettling through the use of lighting and shadows. Now comes the gameplay, which is a nice subversion to FNaF 1 while maintaining core gameplay elements. Battery is only drained using the doors this time, which is honestly great as checking the cameras is very essential, so you'll be staying on them a lot. First is Flumpty Bumpty. He's an egg. He has no set pattern and can appear on any camera at random. When you see that he isn't on any camera, that means he's at your door. This on its own makes the cameras very handy, and we're not even at the others. Then there's Birthday Boy Blam. He goes on a set path towards the right door. When you see him wearing his Kevin Jr. outfit, it means he's ready to attack, something that remains consistent with every Flumpty's game. The Beaver is on the toilet, slowly running out of toilet paper, indicating when he's going to get you. When you see him gone from the bathroom, shut the right door. He's essentially this game's equivalent of Foxy. At 3 AM, the Red Man starts to move around. He slowly moves in a set pattern towards the left door. But the thing with him is that he can't be seen on the cameras, as the camera feed for whatever room he's in becomes red static. This can actually play into your strategy when it comes to Flumpty and Blam, because you may not know where they are in certain moments. Is Flumpty at your door? Did Blam leave the door? This leads to you potentially taking risks or trying to play it safe at the expense of power, and I love that. Then there's what he actually looks like once he reaches your door. Yeah, not a fan. At 4 AM... Ew, wall clowns? Come on guys, I thought we sprayed for these. This is Grumpus the Clown, and his deal is that he'll get closer and closer to you the more you pull up the monitor to check the cameras, allowing you to do so 30 times before he kills you. You can check how many times you can pull up the monitor by checking the pit of eyes in camera 5. I love this mechanic because it further incentivizes strategy. It forces you to use cameras more sparingly, while also incentivizing you to spend more time on the cameras with each visit to make each time worth your while. And finally, there's Golden Flumpty, who not only looks sick as hell and is a cute gag on the concept of golden eggs, but he works the exact same way as Golden Freddy, with the player having to pull up the monitor to get rid of him. He can appear as early as 1 AM, but becomes more active around 4 AM. How nice of Jonochrome to take an Easter egg from FNaF 1 and turn the concept into a more prevalent mechanic. His mechanic can clash with Grumpus's, so watch out. This night has very creative mechanics that play off of FNaF 1's elements that, in my opinion, make the cameras more useful while incentivizing more strategy. Then there's the hard-boiled mode, which was added in an update. In this mode, the characters activate earlier in the night and move much more frequently, creating a great challenge that can become quite tense. And what's the story? Well, all the lore is practically one big joke. Why are you here? Flumpty kidnapped you because he felt like it. Why is the Red Man like that? He drank lava and lived, kinda. How can Flumpty do all this?
I'm immune to the plot and I can transcend time and space.
The game's story is very nonsensical in an intentional way that was very refreshing at the time for a FNaF fan game. The humor was nice as well, being very absurdist in its style. My favorite gag is clicking the blue cactus on the desk, and it says,
I'm a cactus.
"Indeed you are. Indeed you are. Thank you, gag, for inspiring my favorite creation of mine. Thank you." Overall, this game is a nice spin on the FNaF 1 gameplay with a great art style and absurd humor, netting in an A-tier spot on the list. Perfectly absurd, perfectly charming, perfectly Flumpty. Talk about a vast improvement over the original. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is a game that trounces the first game in almost every single aspect, landing an easy S tier. To get it out of the way right now, the one thing the first game did better was the atmosphere. The first game implemented lighting and shadows better, making for a more unsettling environment. But yeah, enough of that. Let's talk about why this game is awesome. This game introduces a new mechanic that everything else in the game works off of, the light. I would explain it, but I don't need to. Let Flumpty and his friends do it for me.
Welcome one and all the Flumpty Bumpties. If your light's turned off, then you're safe. If your lights are on, then they'll come find you and rip you a brand new face.
Yeah, essentially, Flumpty and his friends will try to find you, and if they see you, they'll fill up your exposure meter. If it fills up all the way, you die. I love this mechanic. It allows room for error while also not being relied on as a crutch to save you from everything. You can't just gun it and keep the light off all the time, because it needs to be on to access the cameras. Two characters that specifically rely on them are the Owl, who can go through one of two vents, Foxy style, and the Red Man, whose pop-up appears on the cameras. If you don't check the cameras to close it, you'll get a red screen of death, culminating in a jump scare. If you risk dealing with these two without checking the patterns of the other characters and decide to keep the lights off the whole time, they can nick at your exposure meter more and more until they kill you. Death by a million cuts. So it's important you don't let them do that. Flumpty Bumpty and Birthday Boy Blam work the exact same way they did in the last game, with Blam having a set pattern and Flumpty having no pattern. For the sake of balancing, they have Blam instantly peek into your room while Flumpty does a peekaboo motion before looking. That's why it's important to look at Blam on the cameras to see where he is. You don't want him to slowly eat away at your exposure. At 2 AM, Grunkfist becomes active, and you need to keep watch of his patience meter. When it goes down to 0, he instantly appears in your room, filling the exposure meter more than Blam. Then there's the eyesore. Becoming active at 4 AM, they move in a set pattern like Blam, then enters your office. It's paramount that you know where they are, because if they enter your room, your exposure meter will fill up insanely fast. And finally, there's Golden Flumpty. Either turn off the lights or flip up the monitor to get him to go away. So there's a wonderful balance of checking the cameras and turning the light off, and more strategy is thrown into the mix when you realize that the monitor can run out of power, and can only recharge when the lights are on. If it runs out, you have to wait for it to reboot and start back up. So it's best to briefly check the cameras and take in as much information as you can in a short amount of time. This all culminates in a well-balanced yet hectic experience with brilliant mechanics. But that's not all, as this was truly the first game in the series to implement hard-boiled mode, working just like in the first game. With the already hectic gameplay, good luck keeping up, as you're going to die a lot. The strategy I use is when the Owl is gone, I check the camera of the closed vent. If he's not there, I close the other vent, turn the lights off, and wait for him to hit it. So yeah, the gameplay is rock solid, and just like the last game, the story is absurd. Where's the beaver? He fell in the toilet, killing him. What's eyesore? A monster amalgamation of the bodies of Flumpty's past victims. And allegedly, Flumpty killed 100 billion birds with one stone, with that stone being an asteroid, and the day he did it being the apocalypse. What can I even say to this stuff? It's completely nonsensical, and I love it. So if you want a FNaF fan game that takes advantage of every gameplay element it has while being wholly original, One Night at Flumpty's 2 is the game for you.
Hiya, best friend. Wouldn't you know it, after all this time, you still haven't survived until 6 AM. But if you ever do, I'll finally let you leave. Until then, friends, let's play.
And it gets even better! One Night at Flumpty's 3 is an experience that surpasses its predecessor in S tier. Just like the last two games, it looks fantastic, matching the first game in terms of atmospherics, playing with colors, lights, shadows, and disturbing and chilling imagery in an elegant dance. Then comes the gameplay, focused on two things, camera flashes and your temperature. Flumpty's merry band of pals come down the hallway and the vent to your right, so it's important to flash them when they're there. But of course, you don't know if they're there unless you check the cameras. Grunkfist is the one exception, as if he's in the hallway, you'll die if he's flashed, so be sure to check the cameras for his whereabouts. And make sure not to flash willy-nilly, as you have a limited amount of flashes. A solid mechanic that incentivizes checking the cameras and strategy. But that's not all, as you also have to maintain your temperature. As you can see, you're in Flumpty's freezer room, and you're slowly losing body heat. If you get too cold, you freeze, being free for the taking to threats that want to slurp up your eyeballs. The only way to raise it back up is by going to the left and warming up at the furnace. It's slow, however, so you have to make the decision to stay or break away to deal with threats. Yet on top of that, there are threats related to the furnace and your temperature. There's a camera that shows the opposite side of the furnace, with the red man slowly approaching. If he enters the furnace, you can't use it until he leaves, so it's important to top up your temperature before he gets there. Then there's Golden Flumpty, who can appear in any camera. If you put your monitor back down when he's on screen, he makes you colder by delivering a chilling phantom jump scare. The balance between this and managing the threats you need to flash is great, and makes for a satisfying gameplay loop. But to be honest, it doesn't have as good of a gameplay loop as the second game. And come to think of it, where's Flumpty? I didn't see him all night, which is honestly pretty damn lame. Hey yo, what the fuck? Okay, screw what I said earlier. One Night at Flumpty's 3's Flumpty Night is batshit insane. And it's even better than One Night at Flumpty's 2's gameplay loop. It's just Flumpty, and transcending time and space, he appears in many places at once, with each Flumpty having a mechanic similar to a threat from the previous night, with some being slightly different. For example, Shadow Flumpty acts like Golden Flumpty, but every time you put your monitor down, when he's on screen, he gets closer and closer to you, similar to Grunkfist's mechanic from the first game. And fucking animating Flumpty goes through the vents like the beave owl, but instead of gradually coming closer, he goes through the vents full sprint at you, similar to the Foxy-like mechanics from the last two games. Also, that animation, holy fuck, get that thing the hell away from me right now! And speaking of similarities, later throughout the night, Flumpty will continuously add more cameras and threats that have their own mechanics, actually being mechanics from the previous two games. One has the exposure mechanic from the second game, another has a mechanic where you block doorways like in the first game, and another where you block them from flipping a switch that shuts off all your power. And the last two threats I mentioned being blocked off by lasers, a mechanic from the cancelled 1 week at Flumpty's. And yes, I mentioned power, again from the first game. This is all way too much to manage, and yet it's all balanced beautifully. Every time I died, I felt like it was my fault. And near the end of the night, electro swing music starts to play. Not only does this make the finale more grand and fun, but also makes it more intense, making it harder to focus. It even has vocals.
Welcome to Flumpty Bumpty's, it's your time to beat the egg and leave this place behind. Your brain is feeling scrambled, the end is out of sight, but if you hold on longer, you might survive the night.
All the mechanics combined with returning mechanics remixed into a chaotic night with holy fuck imagery and goddamn electro swing makes this not only the best gameplay in the series, but one of the best nights in FNaF fan game history. Once the night is over, Flumpty finally lets you go, only to discover that the outside world is an apocalyptic wasteland. I mean, I guess that's what you get when you slam a gigantic asteroid into the planet. But don't worry guys, I'll fix it. Guys, nothing happened. Okay, if you want a better ending, you actually have to play through this game's hard-boiled mode, which works just like the other two games, except now, the two nights are merged, changing into Flumpty Night at 3 AM. A great night for people looking for a challenge once again, and when you beat it, you reach 6 AM. Yeah, I didn't really mention this, but this is the first game where you actually reach 6 AM. In the first game, it was ham, in the second game, it was spam, and in this game's Flumpty Night, it's salami. Finally reaching 6 AM shows us that the one night we've stayed at Flumpty's kept resetting over and over again, and beating this night in particular finally put it to an end. And with Flumpty's ability to transcend time and space, he fixes the world before finally letting us go, both literally and figuratively.
I'll miss you.
This ending is beautiful. Jonochrome knew that this was the last game in the series, so he wanted to give it a proper send-off to fans who have been with the series for almost 7 years. It's satisfying and poignant, leaving you with the beautiful music and powerful image of Flumpty voluntarily leaving the world into a ray of light, never to be seen again. Finishing on a powerful image with beautiful music is the best way to end a series, if only FNaF can go back in time and take notes. But whatever, One Night at Flumpty's 3 was an amazing game that served as the perfect send-off to the series. It's rare to have a series where each installment is better than the last while ending in the most satisfying way you can think of. But One Night at Flumpty's was a crack above the rest.
You have 1 new message.
Five Nights at Candy's is a game, and it sure does in fact exist. I know the game was revolutionary in the FNaF fan game scene in terms of its strong visual resemblance to FNaF in general, and it's usually the first game that pops into people's heads when they hear the words FNaF fan game. But yeah, this game's pretty mid. The presentation is fine enough, but the office's panoramic view looks like shit, stretching too much on the sides of the screen to feel realistic. I wouldn't even call it revolutionary in terms of gameplay because One Night at Flumpty's came out before it, and it felt much more original in terms of mechanics. Essentially, the doors have no lights, and the majority of the animatronics attack by going to either your left or right door, and you need to close them. Seems like a good change, however, it's worse than FNaF 1 because you can see their eyes in the doorway. Congratulations! You failed at game design! There's literally zero point in checking the cameras for these clowns if you're going to see them at your door anyway. The cameras do have night vision, but have fun finding the purpose for the functionality. There is Old Candy, whose eyes don't glow, and the challenge is that you have to check the left door camera to know when he's at your door. The fact he's the one exception when his mechanic should have been the standard baffles me. And also, yeah, unlike FNaF where the front of the doors are camera blind spots, here they're directly focused on, making it much easier on the player. There's also no animatronics that spice up the gameplay. All the animatronics wait at the door and none of them necessarily try to be crafty, like Freddy in FNaF 1, who attacks without even standing in front of the door. There's Blank, who works like Foxy, but instead of entering through a door, he tries to break through the glass in the center, having its own door. In my opinion, this is worse than Foxy, because he's the only threat attributed to that door, so I have it at all. I don't think he even drains power like Foxy. Finally, on Night 6, you have Rat, who has a sick design and is pretty fast, and tries to enter from either the left or right hall. While he's cool, I have to say it's pretty late, guys. And the game isn't even really that challenging because it gives you too much power. The cameras don't drain battery, and the doors have this mechanic where they drain more power the more you keep them closed, which sounds interesting on paper until you realize that you only had to close them for so long, making their draining capabilities laughable. The night vision also drains power, but the amount it drains is practically non-existent. If I can beat 720 mode with a good chunk of power in a few attempts, you know you messed up. Also, the game's lore is fine. It's just like FNaF. Children died and haunt the animatronics. Who killed them? What about that puppet that looks suspiciously similar to FNaF's puppet? What's the mistake they made, and what problem are they talking about? And why does Rat look so old in comparison to the others? The game doesn't really tell you these things, keeping them as mysteries to be solved in later installments. What's the same as standard, but I do like what's different for what it is. I'd also like to say that I enjoy how the restaurant is a burger joint. It's nice to take a break from pizzerias, and you can't go wrong with a perfectly cooked burger. Though I had to admit, I don't know how to feel about it being connected to FNaF in a sense, in a separate continuity, and given that this universe is also the same as the Pop Goes universe, then holy shit, children's entertainment venues cannot catch a break. They're causing more child deaths than American schools. Oh, and also the phone calls suck. They aren't the best acted or best written, and they derive too much of their dialogue from Phone Guy's dialogue from FNaF 1 and 2.
Except after that day, the animatronics don't really seem to function properly around adults. Especially not around the staff. Yeah, the animatronics seem to ignore you most of the time, you know, unless you come near them. And they just turn their heads and look at you, like as if you just told a bad joke. I don't know, it's kind of creepy.
Just as a side note though, try to avoid eye contact with any of the animatronic side if you can. Someone may have tampered with their facial recognition systems, we're not sure. But the characters have been acting very unusual, almost aggressive towards the staff. They interact with the kids just fine, but when they encounter an adult, they just stare.
But yeah, we kinda had an accident about a month ago. It seems to have, like, traumatized their systems or something like that.
The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Looks like you're doing a fine job. I mean, you're still here. You're already, like, practically as good as the last guard we had.
Hey, you're doing great. Most people don't last this long.
You, do know that you don't have to be here today, right?
What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo?
This does get remedied in the future, but more on that later. In conclusion, this game isn't the best. Five Nights at Candy's, while impactful, leaves a lot to be desired. I do have respect for the game though, and I just hope that the next game in the series gets a jump in quality. Wow, this game is garbage! Next! Okay, I wouldn't do that to you, but wow, this is really bad. Five Nights at Candy's 2 has a fundamental flaw that ruins the entire experience. Basically, the animatronics get closer to you and you stop them by calling one of the cameras. And it doesn't matter how far away the camera is. You may start to notice a problem with this, that being that you can literally stay in one camera the entire night and call cameras randomly until you fucking win. They try to circumvent this by not allowing multiple animatronics to be in one camera, but that doesn't really do anything to help. There's Chester, who bangs on the vent of a random camera, but guess what? You can hear what side he's on, then quickly call the cameras on said side and hear for when he leaves, allowing you to continue the process. It's laughably bad due to an insane oversight in game mechanics. There's even a night with Rat and a new character named Cat, who are faster than the others, but since there's only two of them and they can be on one camera at once, it's somehow even easier. Difficulty progression? The fuck's that? And while all that is easy, there's still somehow a mechanic that's super bullshit in later nights, and that the penguin can appear on the cameras, and if you stare at him too long, he momentarily disables your monitor. This mechanic is tolerable on nights 3 and 4, but nights 5 through 8 make it absolutely infuriating, and it's due to the fact that you have no time to react whatsoever. If you see him, tough shit, no monitor for you! And if you're sad he doesn't appear in the Rat and Cat nights, don't worry, Rat does it too! Hooray! Also, the lore in this game is pee-pee poo-poo! You play as the daughter of Mary Schmidt from the last game, Marilyn Schmidt. See, it's to confuse people into thinking they might be the same person, because that's how FNaF do. And the reason she's in this old abandoned factory is because she was dared to stay there for 5 nights because she lost a bet. Marilyn's a dumbass. She's risking her organs not remaining in her body because of her reputation? Living is nice and all, but people will think I'm a chicken. Chip, 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 and the animatronics are withered, yet Candy and Cindy are slightly different, confusing people on whether or not they're the same. Yeah, there's no purpose in this. They explain it in the minigames, but you can remove this from the story and miss nothing. I guess everything else is fine. The reason Old Candy got retired is good. I like how Rat destroys Chester and kills a guy. And it's nice roaming around as Blank and seeing the drawings. And that teaser for FNAF 3? That is a nice teaser. Also, Shadow Candy. He cool. But yeah, that's Tom and Jerry's Eatery, Part 2. Just watch Mark play it. Five Nights at Candy's 3 is personally my favorite game in the Five Nights at Candy series, barely making A tier. For one, I enjoy the atmosphere, taking the concept of FNAF 4's bedroom and making it much more eerie, due to the overwhelming darkness that your flashlight must pierce through. And skulking through the darkness are the monster animatronics, who are essentially the nightmare animatronics done right. With the nightmares, I thought they were trying too hard to be scary. They looked like they were made by someone to try and be scary, but they were too ambitious, and went overboard with every aspect. They never felt alive, what with the tears and exposed metal. The monsters are the exact opposite, sporting a more fleshy appearance that's simpler yet very effective. Look at Monster Rat. The stitching down his face, his whiskers and nose, and that creepy smile gives off the vibe that not only is he a living, breathing creature, but he would tear you apart and enjoy every second of it. And you know he could. I mean, look at how buff they are. Like, goddamn, they lift! Monster Vinny isn't fleshy, but that fits better with his design given that he's a puppet. And the way he floats and moves with his piercing stare makes him rather unsettling. But is it just me, or is the normal Vinny in the extras scarier than the monster version? Good lord, he's staring right through me! Now comes the gameplay, which many have said has a very repetitive loop that barely changes through the 5 main nights. See, you mainly deal with Monster Rat by spawning him in one of 3 doors to get him to retreat, and he'll get faster and faster, even trying to fake you out with noise. If you can't find him in time, he'll enter your room and you'll engage in a confrontation, where you must shine your light at his face until he goes away as he bobs and weaves to avoid it. After doing it enough, he hides under your bed. You check what side he's on, then look in the opposite direction to lure him out. You hear when he comes out, flash him one more time, and he retreats to repeat the process once again until 6 AM arrives. Monster Cat appears on night 3 onwards, appearing on either side of your bed, slowly approaching until you shine your light on him, sending him back. And that's all until night 6. They're right, the gameplay is very repetitive with not many mechanics at play. But damn it, it's so much fun! And it mainly has to do with the aspect of flashing Monster Rat, as it's so cool trying to hit him with the light as he continuously dodges. No FNaF fan game I've seen does something like this, and I think that lets it stand out. It's even better on night 6, as you engage in a confrontation with Monster Vinny, who not only has more complex dodging patterns to fake you out with, but can also move to other areas while doing so, making his confrontations the most fun to deal with. Then there's the tape player. Playing it makes the night go much faster, yet this comes with its own risk. Monster Rat and Monster Vinny can tamper with the player when they go under your bed, causing it to make loud noises, thus making it harder to hear for when they sneak back up to strike. And even then, using it in the first place can make it easier for them to begin the first phase of their attack. And the best part is that it's all optional, so use it as you see fit. This is pretty cool, balancing reward with risk neatly. And all this doesn't even mention that in between nights, you enter the Deepscape. The first time you enter, you need to find the tape player. Every time afterwards, exploration is optional, but it allows you to find lore snippets, arcade games, and NPCs in the form of toys you can talk to. Exploration comes with risks, however, for if you stray from the path, you risk getting found by Shadow Rat, who resides in the darkness. If he finds you... And after night 3, Shadow Cat becomes a threat. He's associated with a timer, and when you step into the darkness, the timer goes down. Once it reaches 0... Things get trickier to find in the Deepscape each night as the layouts get more complicated and complex, so explore at your own risk. This is one of the 3 main highlights of the game for me, as it's fun figuring out where to go to find arcade games and the toys. And speaking of the arcade games, finding the arcade games unlocks them for you to play in the extras menu. Fishing with Candy sees you playing as Candy the Cat, as you gather fish in a basket whilst avoiding garbage. Cindy's Garden has you whacking moles that are trying to eat her flowers. Those are fine and all, but they pale in comparison to the second highlight of the game, Candy's Adventure! Here you play as Old Candy in a 2D platformer, collecting coins and upgrades to your health, jump, swipe range, and swipe damage as you battle dogs on your way to defeat the boss dog. I love this. It's just the right difficulty, the level design is solid, and there's just enough enemy variety for its length. If you're thinking that this concept should be expanded upon, it is! FNaC Fur, coming soon to a computer near you. Thanks, Emil Macko! And speaking of the arcade games and the Deepscape, once you beat Night 6, you're invited to try out a new challenge, the 3rd highlight of the game. Play through the entire game again, looking for somebody. Who is he? Well, that's where the toys come in. Finding them in the Deepscape and typing, "Where is he?" allows the toys to give you a hint on how to find him one of 5 times. Each time you solve a hint, you're invited to play a special minigame, and beating it gives you 1/5 of a star. Getting the star and clicking it reveals Lollipop, the one you were looking for. Mary's once favorite toy and a self-insert of the creator of FNaC, Emil Macko himself, telling you about a project that sadly never came to be. And finally, there's the Shadow Challenge, found in the extras menu as well. Playing it puts you in a confrontation with the returning Shadow Rat, who's like Monster Rat except much faster. So fast, in fact, that accuracy with your light is paramount to avoid dying. You can even apply modifiers to the challenge, and these net you special shadow stars, with doing all of them at once giving you a special 4th star. The modifiers can even be applied to the regular knights, and that's honestly pretty cool. Then there's the lore, which is honestly the best in the entire series. All the questions that were asked in the first game are solved here. Who killed the children? Cat did. Back in the factory from the first and second game where all the animatronics were made, Cat caught children and put them on an assembly machine where they were mangled to death as their spirits possessed the parts used to make all the animatronics. What about the puppet that looks suspiciously similar to FNaF's puppet? That's Vinny, a puppet character from the oldest establishment associated with Candy the Cat, the Rat and Cat Theater, starring Randy the Rat, alongside his partner, the oldest iteration of Candy the Cat. What's the mistake Vinny made, and what's Mary's problem that they're talking about? See, Vinny was puppeteered by a performer who got in a confrontation with the performer in the rat costume because he showed up to work drunk, and they wore costumes because there were no animatronics back then. With the puppeteer wanting the performer to take off the suit and go home, and the performer being resistant due to his ego, they fight, ending in an accident where the performer hits the back of his neck on a table, paralyzing him as he slowly bleeds to death. This was Vinny's mistake. It's made worse when you consider that on the back of the suit's necks are these uncomfortable zipper locks that attach the heads of the suits directly to the torso. And since the presumably bulky thing was right behind the performer's neck, it didn't make things much better. In fact, he probably would have been fine if it wasn't there at all. The performer in the catsuit confronts him about it and wants to tell the truth to the police, wanting to tell them that it was an accident. Not wanting to risk potential jail time and his career as an actor, the puppeteer strangles the performer, taking advantage of the zipper lock to death, selfishly saving himself. After the incident, the performers are replaced by animatronics, Rat and Cat, who the two performers possess. Presumably blaming Mary hiding in the performer's room causing their deaths, they now attack children and adults to try and get revenge, resulting in her brother getting hurt, the establishment shutting down, and getting many children killed in the factory, causing them to possess the other animatronics. This is the problem Vinny referred to. The vendetta Rat and Cat have caused everything else to happen, and Mary aims to resolve it. After the place closed down due to her brother's accident, Mary took therapy and she needed to tackle her guilt and fear, represented by the monsters. Once she does this, she opens up about the day she saw the accident, resulting in the puppeteer's arrest. It's implied he dies in prison, and his spirit goes on to become the hallucination of his old puppet Vinny that we see in the first two games. And although this is never mentioned in the games, I like to point out that the Shadow animatronics are the souls of the performers themselves, with Shadow Cat eventually becoming Shadow Candy. If Rat and Cat aren't in the same place, they can appear in each other's location as a shadow. I just wish they hinted at this more, and maybe they can in a future installment. But yeah, Five Nights at Candy's 3 may have its flaws, yet they're overshadowed by everything else it has to offer.
You have one new message.
Congratulations, Five Nights at Candy's Remastered! You managed to take mid and transformed it into good enough, residing at the bottom of B tier. The visuals are greatly improved upon, with the animatronics looking much cleaner. The jump scares were improved too. I didn't mention this before, but the jump scares in the first game outside of rats weren't that great. They were just too slow, as if they were like, hey, come here often. But now they actually look like they mean business. Even the office's panoramic view was fixed, and it looks really nice. The downside to this though is that Rat, Old Candy, and Blank look too bright now, and their designs were heightened by how dark and damaged they looked. Rat's jump scare, in my opinion, also took a small hit because that cool photo negative effect with those glowing eyes was lost. But returning to the positives, even the phone calls were improved. Looks like Emil went to acting school, as not only are his deliveries better, but so is the dialogue, feeling less like awkward rehashes but actually stand on their own. But outside of that, gameplay remains the same, which is honestly a shame, as so much could have been improved upon to help it stand alone without the similarities to Five Nights at Freddy's holding it back from being truly unique without being inferior. I mean, 720 mode is still piss easy. Oh well, guess what's broken remains broken. I'm just gonna look at these improved models one more time before moving along to the next set of games. Man, so clean. Too bad they made Rat too bright. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry. What? Man, this was a really cool secret. If you input Rat's code into the custom knight, you unlock Knight Null, in which you have a solo confrontation with Shadow Candy. The knight itself has interesting mechanics. He starts at camera 13, and if he disappears, he'll appear in any of the cameras excluding the 3 doors. Not just that, but he can reside in the darkness or night vision mode, so you must go through all the cameras while switching between the 2 modes to find him as fast as you can. Once you do, you need to stare at him until he returns to camera 13. If you fail to find him, however, he'll appear at one of the 3 door cameras, and you need to close the door before he enters. If you do, he drains plenty of power. If you don't, he enters your office and sets the clock back an hour, freezes time, and steals anywhere from 2 to 8% of your power. To reverse this, Origami Cat, who I honestly don't understand the existence of, will appear in a random camera, and clicking him returns him to your office, restoring time back to normal and returning your stolen power. The only true way to die is if you lose power, resulting in... Holy shit. Yeah, this knight is pretty cool, although I must say, pretty repetitive. Returning him to camera 13 by checking the cameras is the only thing you do all night, and I have to admit, it's not as cool as the flashlight confrontations in FNaF 3. It's still fun in its own right, however, and it gives you a teaser for Five Nights at Candy's 4 upon completion, which is very cool. But from what I see, it looks like it's going down the sister location route. Oh boy. Let's just hope it actually has engaging gameplay. I'm still looking forward to it though. But yeah, Five Nights at Candy's Remastered is a pretty good remaster that eliminates any reason to play the original.
Hello there, old sport. You must be the newbie. How do you like it here at Freddy's?
I'm going to do something pretty unconventional for this series and review them all at the same time. Because the Dayshift at Freddy's trilogy excels at something so well that no other fan game can even contend with it. Humor. The trilogy excels at it all, from standard humor to absurdist humor, dark humor, and nonsense humor, with the game's presentation of JPEG images and 8-bit sprites heightening the entire experience. It gets even better when you encounter Dave, who's hands down the best and most charming purple guy I've ever had the pleasure of being introduced to, as well as being the best and funniest character in the trilogy. In fact, the humor is so good that I dare not ruin it here, for the only way you should experience it is to play the game for yourself as God intended. As it comes to the ranking, the first game sits in A tier above Flumpty's, with the even funnier second game above it in A tier. The third game isn't as funny as the other two, but makes up for it with beautifully emotional moments and a satisfying conclusion that all works so well because of how much you've gotten to know the characters throughout the series and how lovable they are. Adding on top of that the fact that you can make your own pizzeria truly makes up for the loss in humor and nets it the highest spot in A tier. The Dayshift at Freddy's games are masterpieces of humor in their own right, and must be played to truly understand why.
This is the story of the night I lost my home, my childhood, and almost my family. When Five Nights at Freddy's just ended.
This game is a FNaF fan game masterpiece. The Joy of Creation story mode is the best game on this list, garnering a very easy S tier. For one, holy crap, this game looks amazing! Unreal Engine has its name for a reason, and Nikson took advantage of it as much as he possibly could. Everything looks so realistic, the lighting is amazing, and the way darkness is utilized to create such eerie environments is fantastic, creating a setting you wouldn't even want to dream about setting foot in. And the animatronics? Holy shit! Imagine the withered animatronics if you made them look even more fucked up and infuriated after spending some time burning in the fires of hell. Those are the ignited animatronics. Foxy looks ravenous as all hell with his bright red eyes and quivering jaw, and Bonnie's design makes him look even more frail and dead, making him seem very unsettling whilst his mannerisms make him feel all the more enraged. I also love what he did with ignited Golden Freddy, as he floats in the air as his appendages slightly quiver, as if he's barely clinging on to what little life he has, yet he still has intimidatingly demanding presence due to his capabilities and how he's technically present in every level. And that laugh. Damn, that's so good. All of this isn't even mentioning the Fallen. These are so fucking unsettling and are probably the scariest creations to come from a FNaF fan game and FNaF games in general. And their jump scares make me shit my pants. Now comes the gameplay, and honestly, this is the concept of sister location if it was done perfectly. Each scenario is different, but instead of being way too simple and mindless to be interesting, each one has different mechanics that play off each other in great ways, creating experiences that stand apart from each other whilst being wholly original. First is the bedroom, which is like FNaF 4 if you actually made it interesting. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again in a monotonous loop with no resource to spark any interest or strategy, each animatronic demands a specific action from you whilst you manage to maintain a resource, that being your sanity. Throughout the night, looking at animatronics or sleeping unnecessarily causes you to lose sanity, and looking at the lamp while it's turned on allows you to maintain it. You can see your sanity indicated by the thermostat, as it starts green, then goes from yellow to orange, and finally to red. If you lose your sanity past red, the night ends. You have to balance maintaining your sanity with dealing with the animatronics. Ignited Freddy appears at your window, and when you see him looking at you, shut the curtain and hear for when he leaves. Bonnie makes 3 sets of knocks before entering your room. During the 3rd set, turn your lights off and sit in the crib. He can't open your door if Freddy's looking through the window, however. Chica makes a creaking noise before entering, being much quieter than Bonnie. When she opens the closet, turn off the light and don't pretend to sleep. Eventually, she'll go away. But failure to do so will cause her to stun you for a few seconds and drain a good portion of your sanity. If your sanity's in the red, however, she kills you. Her mechanic overlaps with Freddy's and Bonnie's, but as long as your light is off, you'll be fine. Foxy slowly emerges from your bed, making noises in the process. When you see him standing over you, try to avoid eye contact and pretend to sleep, making sure that you look up whilst closing your eyes. You'll hear a noise and he'll go away. He overlaps with everybody, but as long as you avoid looking at him for long enough, you'll be safe for a while. Just make sure you turn off your light before he appears, because he can block it. At 5 AM, your sanity is forced into the red, so you have to play as carefully as you can while everything becomes more intense. This scenario's mechanics are wonderfully balanced, and creates a good gameplay loop that can be pretty stressful, while the overlapping mechanics allow for the incentivization of strategy via order of operations. Already, it's better than any night from the Five Nights at Candy series, and need I remind you, this is only the first scenario. The second scenario sees you in the living room. Here, the main mechanic revolves around the television. On it, there are 2 feeds showing the points of view of both Freddy and Foxy as they move down the hallways to get you. When one appears, you need to hide from their line of sight. The problem is that if they both come at once, you're dead no matter where you hide. To prevent this, you need to pause their feed, as doing so pauses the animatronics' movement, allowing them to desync. While you manage the television, you have to be on alert for Bonnie. He enters through the door from the middle, getting closer and closer, indicated by a haunting moan. After he moans 4 times, he'll burst through the doors, and you must hide from his line of sight. He cannot enter the same time as Freddy or Foxy, so focusing on priority is essential. Finally, Chica will make a growling noise if you stay on the couch for too long. If you hear it, you need to stand up and stay still until it stops. If you don't, Chica will stun you very briefly and will not allow you to look at the television for 10 seconds. At 5 AM, she'll try to attack you every 4 seconds you're on the couch, and if she's successful, you die. Overall, another solid scenario. In comes the office, and here, rather than hoping for 6 AM, 6 AM is something to dread, for when it comes, Freddy will put an end to your happiness. To avoid this, you need to use the cameras. The cameras have a feed in front of each door, and you need to find Freddy. If you find Freddy in one of the cameras, open the door corresponding to it, and you'll flash him. Flash him 11 times before 6 AM comes, and you win. It won't be easy though, as the others will distract you from your main goal. Foxy will appear in a camera, and if you open the door corresponding to that camera, you die. To avoid this, stare at him in the camera until he goes away. As the night progresses, he can start to appear in 2 places at once, forcing you to waste more time on him. If you don't get rid of him in the cameras, he'll break into your office and kill you after a bit if you don't encounter him at any of the doors. Chica will slowly try to enter into your office through a stain in the wall, and in order to get her to go away, you have to find her 3 cupcakes. They can hide in one of 4 places in the room as indicated by audio cues, or they can be outside one of the 3 doors. Looking at her also freezes her in place. And then there's Bonnie. If you look at his face in a camera, he'll punch it, permanently destroying it in the process. This makes it harder to find Freddy while also making it harder to deal with Foxy while doing so. It does make it easier to deal with Foxy and the cameras, however. If one camera is left, he can no longer appear at multiple doors at once, and if all of them are gone, you have to rely on audio to know where he is, although he always doesn't give a cue, so it's not that safe anyways. It would be very hard to find Freddy without cameras anyways, so it's practically like trying to survive against Medusa by stabbing your eyeballs. But yes, once again, a solid scenario with great mechanics, and we're 3 for 3. We then get to a major change-up with the basement. In this scenario, it's free roam, and you're given 5 tasks throughout while trying to avoid the absolutely terrifying Fallen. Some tasks are hard, some are short, but you can die all the same, and nothing can change how intense and stress-inducing they all are. Endo C Mouth acts like a proximity mine. They stand absolutely still, until you get too close, in which case, you die. Endo B Angel stays still when you look at them and moves when you don't. They can appear in massive numbers, so knowing where to look will eventually be essential. Endo F Red appears solely in Task 4, and you need to walk down this hallway without stopping and without looking back. And honestly, the sound design for this segment is horrifying. Seriously, listen to this. You can't without your butthole clenching, desperately hoping you can make it through the door. Yeah, see, that's gonna be a hell no from me, Chief. And finally, there's Endo R Blue. During a task, you may see hallucinations warning you that you aren't safe, telling you to return back to the bathroom. If you don't heed the warning, well... The basement is honestly a standout here. It's extremely intense and stress-inducing, with a dark and unsettling environment as the icing on top of this. With the scariest enemies in the game thrown into the mix, it's one scenario to remember. Finally comes the big one, the showstopper. The absolute best scenario in the game and is, in my opinion, the best night in FNaF history, the attic. This night is absolutely perfect, and has, in my opinion, the sweatiest gameplay I've ever experienced in a FNaF game. The atmosphere is intense, with that haunting, droning theme playing throughout the entire night, the darkness contrasted by the gloomy, dull lights as well as the intense, raging fires, and the imagery is absolutely chilling. Just look at the Fallen! Does that imagery make you feel easy? The night revolves around one thing, Golden Freddy. He can appear in one of the cameras, displaying the other scenarios you've been through. Flip the switch on the right to flash him. If he's not in any camera, he could be right behind you, and you need to look at him, then look away to get him to leave before he kills you. You have to flash him 12 times in order to win. But don't worry, the game doesn't make this easy whatsoever. Throwing a wrench into your plans is the persistent and enraged Creation, an amalgamation of all the other ignited animatronics. They'll try to move up through all the cameras in order to reach the attic and kill you. To do so, they must break through barriers in each room, requiring 2 successful movements from their starting phase to get past into the next camera. Their movements are indicated by a roar he makes every 30 seconds right before doing so. With a successful attack, he's able to attack again, as he doesn't return to his starting phase. To reset him to his starting phase in a camera, the player must flash him with the exact same switch used to flash Golden Freddy, and they never appear in the same camera, so it becomes a balance of interest. Do you flash Golden Freddy when you see him to advance progression into the night? Or do you prioritize your safety and target Creation to prevent him from getting closer to you? The choice is yours. Making the decision harder is that the more you flash Golden Freddy, the more the house burns in a raging fire. And if Creation is in a room engulfed in flames, his countdown slowly goes down from 30 seconds to around 20 seconds. So if you choose to strike Golden Freddy later in the night, chances are you're giving Creation a free move, so strategy becomes key to your survival. This is all made more intense by the fact that the Switch has a long recharge time, so every use needs to be important. This is fantastic, the perfect balance of risk versus reward I've seen in a FNaF game. And this isn't even taking into account the whole other camera feed. The switch on the left changes the feed entirely to 2 new cameras, with each one representing a door on either side of you. Endo C Mouth and Endo B Angel will try to sneak into your room, and you need to pay attention to which one will appear in the cameras first, as that's the one who will try to enter first. When you see one, close its corresponding door and wait for a bang, then open it and close the other door. Repeat this cycle once they both appear again. Making things more complicated is that Endo R Blue and Endo F Red will try to run into your room from one of the two doors separate from the cameras, and you need to hear them booming through the halls on either the left or the right. They are also prioritized over the other two, so once they stop, the other two can move again. Combined with the main mechanics, this night is phenomenal, and is better than Flumpty's night in my honest opinion. Although Flumpty night has a lot more going on, the attic manages to be much harder with less mechanics. Since there are two feeds, it's somehow harder to remember every detail. The night is still wonderfully balanced in spite of its difficulty, and every death felt like my fault. Once you beat the night, you unlock the extras menu, consisting of new challenges. First, there's bedroom blind mode, where you play the bedroom scenario with a completely black screen. Honestly, this mode falls short of FNaF 4's blind mode. In FNaF 4, you move in a 4-directional fashion, making it much easier to know where you are. In this mode, however, it's impossibly difficult because pinpointing exactly where everything is without directional movement is frustrating and downright unfun. Next is basement run mode, in which you have to beat the basement scenario in under 8 minutes without the ability to pause. A really solid challenge if you like to speedrun. Just try not to make any mistakes, as they can cost you dearly. Finally, there's survival mode. Beat every scenario in a row without the ability to pause. If you die once, that's it. Game over. It's doable, but good fucking luck. You'll need it. In the extras, there's also these newspaper clippings that you can find that present you with some articles that can help explain what exactly is going on. You find them each by doing something specific in each scenario, often with an appearance from Golden Freddy. It's fun figuring out what to do in order to find them, even if sometimes they're counterintuitive to your survival. Goddamn. But speaking of what's going on, the lore here is pretty interesting, unlike anything else I've seen in a FNaF game. The main characters are actually Scott Cawthon and his family, including the fictional Nick Cawthon, Scott Cawthon's son who narrates the past events, named after the developer Nikson. It takes place in an alternate timeline where Scott Cawthon cancels the release of Sister Location. Congratulations, Scott Cawthon! You saved FNaF's lore and sense of realism! Unfortunately, he's not rewarded for his good deed, as he gets very unfortunate visitors. You see, in this world, there are evil spirits, possibly demonic entities, that take shape and assume a form through whatever they burn, or an object in relation to them, thus becoming a copy of it. Wanting to kill Scott and his family so they can burn them and take their places, they burn objects relating to the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise from the basement and operate by their logic to attack, warping time and space in order to do so. Scott strikes a deal with the evil spirit who became Michael Schmidt, and allows himself to burn if his family is spared. Holy shit, that's terrifying and downright depressing. I would say it's bittersweet, but it becomes even worse when you realize that Nick Cawthon returned to his old house after it was repaired and being sent subliminal messages by Golden Freddy, and he gets killed by him. Big oof. Now, people would say that it's weird to make a fictional story of a real-life person and his family, but given that Scott Cawthon himself liked this game enough to put it in the fanverse, I say that this story gets a pass. One downside that I will mention is that while all the voice acting is great, the actress for young Nick, Olivia Steele, doesn't do a good job. She sounds passable until the final cutscene, where Nick sounds like a young woman, and it sucks me out of the moment.
Mommy, Daddy's coming out of the house!
What the fuck is that?
But if that's truly one of the only things wrong with this game, then that truly is an accomplishment. What else can I say? The Joy of Creation story mode is a FNaF fan game icon, and is a game that I'll return to for years to come. Oh shit, I forgot to make an outro in the script. Well guys, that was my fan game tier list. Be sure to check out my friends and have an awesome day. Oh, and if you're wondering why I'm no longer infected by the Mimic 1 program, I've played a few arcade games, I got better.